Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and Pokemon fans of the world, it is MegaCrasher, and I come at you guys back again once again with a pro level of hype, and we are back again with our next Pokemon Competitive Battling Guide / Review, and in this episode, we are going to be taking a look at Nidoking. Now, Nidoking, like its counterpart Nidoqueen, which we reviewed in the last video, has a lot of similarities, but we also have ourselves some differences, which I'll be going over in its entirety here in this video. So if you do enjoy this video and you are a fan of Nidoking, that's a reason to smash the like button. It really helps out the video, guys. So with that being said, and without further ado, let's do this! Woo! Alright guys, so when it comes to Nidoking, like Nidoqueen, it's going to have the very unique ground and poison type combination, which right off the bat, you're going to have an electric immunity, you're going to have a 4 times resistance to poison, and you are also going to have key resistances to the likes of bug, fairy, fighting, and rock. Now, like Nidoqueen, ladies and gentlemen, with this typing right here, you're actually going to be able to absorb toxic spikes, which means that in a way you could be considered a pseudo spinner because you're always going to be able to get rid of toxic spikes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, well, what about, its ground typing? Does that mean it's going to get rid of spikes because it's a ground type move? No. Spikes, unfortunately, are there to stay unless, of course, they get blown away by defog or spun away by rapid spin. Now, also with this typing right here, you have a resistance to rock, which means that you are going to resist stealth rocks, which is also really good, because stealth rocks are kind of annoying, Now, with that being said, though, that's where all the good news ends, because you have 4 weaknesses that you gotta watch out for, that being to ground, ice, psychic, and water, all of which are very, very common offensive moves used in battles. So, you do the best you can to stay away from those moves, And the thing is also is that while Nidoking's stats aren't exactly bad, it doesn't exactly have the bulk that its counterpart Nidoqueen does to be able to tank a super effective hit or 2 when it needs to, but we'll get into that shortly. So we then take a look at the abilities, all of which are the same abilities as Nidoqueen. We got Poison Point, which allows for you to have a chance to poison an opponent that makes contact with you with a move. Now, that can actually be good by itself, but the thing is, right, is that it's outclassed by its last ability, which I'll get into shortly. But the next ability is known as Rivalry. Now, what Rivalry does, in case you guys missed the last video, what it does is it's all based on the gender of your opponent. If it's the same gender, then the power of your moves will be boosted by 25%. If it's of the opposite gender, then your moves will drop by 25%, and if you are facing a genderless Pokemon, well, Rivalry doesn't exactly kick in. Like, it has no effect whatsoever, so it's a very situational ability, you know what I'm saying? So we then get to its last ability, aka the ability you almost always want to use, and in this case here, always want to use, that being Sheer Force. Now, what Sheer Force does is it will boost the power of moves that have secondary effects by 30%, and it will remove those secondary effects from said moves. So the thing is that you are trading potential secondary effects from taking place in those moves for raw power. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I need to make a mention of this because still, I'm really not sure if this was intentionally left in or if it's still a bug that was left unaddressed by Pokemon. But the thing is that if you pair Sheer Force up with Life Orb, then you're not going to suffer Life Orb recoil if you use moves that are boosted by Sheer Force. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So we then take a look at the stats, alright? So it's got base 81 on the HP, base 102 on the attack, which is actually pretty freaking respectable. We got base 77 on the defense, 85 in both the special attack and the speed, and base 75 on the special defense. So clearly its special defense is going to be the lowest, and even with all of that, it still has a really nice balance when it comes to the stats, but it's more offensive oriented, slightly more tailored to dish out hits rather than take hits, whereas Nidoqueen is slightly more tailored to tank hits than dish them out, in which both Pokemon can dish out hits, dish out the pain. But I definitely gotta say that, having stats like this, I really, really love Nidoking, and one of the reasons is because of its stat distribution. I gotta say, I really enjoy it. So with that being said, guys, let's move on now to Pokemon Showdown, and let me show you guys some sets you can use for Nidoking. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so now that we're here on Pokemon Showdown Live, allow me to showcase you guys some really awesome sets that you can run on Nidoking. Now, like Nidoqueen, Nidoking has nearly an endless move pool of craziness, which I'll get into towards the end of the video here. But with the first set right here, we are going all out offensive. Like, we are just gonna go absolutely insane when it comes to the offense. So we got Life Orb paired with Sheer Force, and the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is that all 4 of these moves are boosted by Sheer Force, which means, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to worry about a damn thing when it comes to the Life Orb recoil, you know? And you're still going to reap the full benefits from the effects that Life Orb does, that being boosting the power of your moves by 30%, and then combine that with the 30% power that Sheer Force does when it comes to boosting, you know, moves with secondary effects. Yeah, that's going to be crazy. You're going to be dealing a ton of damage here. So the first move that we got, first and foremost, is going to be Earth Power. You definitely got to have Earth Power because it's ground, it's stab, and it does a lot of damage with all of the boosts factored in, you know? And it's at a very respectable base 90 power as well. So coming up next, we have ourselves Flamethrower, and this is a great move to utilize against the likes of grass, against the likes of bugs, steel, you name it. So with that being said, you know, Pokemon like Scizor, Fortress, you know, Ferrothorn, the list goes on. You know, they're going to be absolutely destroyed by Flamethrower. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So coming up next, we have ourselves Ice Beam. We got to have that coverage against rival ground type Pokemon, as well as flying, grass, and especially dragons, because those run very much rampant in battle, and they're very overpowered as is, you know? And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, you definitely got to carry that Thunderbolt, you know? So that way you can zap water and flying type Pokemon into submission. Now, something else, ladies and gentlemen, is that, you know, what I want to propose is this. If you guys are worried about, you know, the things like fairy and grass type Pokemon, then what you can do is get rid of Flamethrower and put in Sludge Wave. And Sludge Wave is a base 95 power move with a 10% chance to poison. So therefore, by proxy, it will be boosted by Sheer Force. So even still, even without, you know, coverage against Steel and, you know, Grass and Bug type Pokemon, you're gonna have really good type coverage. And see, here's the thing also, is that with Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, you got the Bolt Beam combination, which means that you're gonna have a lot of type coverage just between those two moves, right? And with Earth Power and Sludge Wave, just gonna further add on to it. But if you are really worried about, you know, being walled by Steel types and all that stuff, then, you know, you can definitely replace Sludge Wave with Flamethrower. But, you know, if you're not too worried, then obviously you can go for Sludge Wave to replace Flamethrower if you want. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be moving on to the EVs as well as the nature. So we are going to be going with a timid nature here in this situation. You most definitely want to have speed, okay? You want to have as much speed as possible, so that way you'll be able to outpace a number of threats to the best of your ability. And we're going to be running max special attack and max speed with 252 EVs apiece and 4 into the special defense. Now, something else I want to make note of, okay, is that, you know, this Pokemon right here is very versatile when it comes to moves, or I should say when it comes to items. Not just moves, okay, but items as well. What you can do is you can run something like Choice Scarf, so that way you actually get the jump and multiply that speed of 295 by 50%, so that way you're hitting well over 400 speed, and that way you'll be able to outpace even more threats and be kind of like a revenge killer as well. Or if you are not, you know, really caring too much on speed, then you can go for Choice Specs if you want. Choice Specs is definitely going to be an interesting item to have. But all in all, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot go wrong with Life Orb, because Life Orb, like I said, combined with Sheer Force and the use of Sheer Force boosted moves, you don't have to worry about the recoil that Life Orb normally would dish out on you, you know? So with that being said, that's just something to keep in mind. So coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a very similar set. But the thing is, in this situation, you know, we are going to be used as a Stealth Rock / lead set, and we don't want Poison Point, we want Sheer Force. We need to have Sheer Force whenever you're running Nidoking, although, you know, Poison Point could be an interesting little thing to throw off your opponents, because normally your opponents would be expecting a Sheer Force Nidoking, right? But if they don't see a Sheer Force, and they see something like Poison Point, and they go for a contact move, and they get poisoned, they're going to be like, oh, WTF, what the hell just happened, right? And in a situation like that, if you are going to go for Poison Point, then you most certainly and most definitely want to forgo Life Orb and go for something like, say, Black Sludge, you know? Because Black Sludge in that situation will actually give you a little bit of a restorative ability you know, it will restore 1/16 of your health at the end of each turn, and, you know, you can just, you know, do all sorts of craziness from there, you know. But my recommendation, though, ladies and gentlemen, definitely Life Orb and definitely Sheer Force, but, you know, you can't go wrong with trying out different combinations, right? So, the first move that we got is known as Stealth Rocks, which is a very, very amazing move for this Pokemon to have. Now, there's also other options, ladies and gentlemen. You go for something, does this thing have Toxic Spikes? Yes, it does. You can go for something like Toxic Spikes. You could go for something like Taunt if you want. So you could run an entry hazard slot. You can run, say, Taunt. So that way you end up shutting down setup against your opponents if you were to outspeed them, and you could run Earth Power and Ice Beam. You definitely want to have Earth Power for stab because it's the more superior stab when you compare it to its poison stab being Sludge Wave. Earth Power just, you know, hits a lot more things for super effective and more consistent damage, and you definitely want to have something like Ice Beam, so that way, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be able to hit a ton of threatening Pokemon for super effective damage. You know, like I said, you know, ground, flying, grass, dragon, you name it. You know, there's a lot of Pokemon that suffer from a crippling Ice Beam weakness, you know. Now, like I said, you know, like, there's a lot of options for a set like this, you know. If you don't want to run Taunt, then you could go for, you know, an attack, you know, go for Sludge Wave or something like that. It's really up to you, and, you know, you can change things around, you know, where you can either run Toxic Spikes or Stealth Rocks. Basically just giving you a lot of options here, you know. So, we then go to the EV spread right here. We're going to be going once again for Intimidator because you want to have as much speed as possible. So that way, you'll be able to outpace other leads potentially, and set up some entry hazards, and then deliver the pain, you know? So we got Intimidator to lower the attack and increase the speed, and we are going to be running, once again, 252 EVs into the special attack, and 252 EVs into the speed, with 4 on the special defense. Now, coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to the physical counterpart of Nidoking. Now, this right here, okay? Nidoking has a really solid base 102 physical attack, okay? We definitely got to make use of that, right? So what we got going on here, ladies and gentlemen, we have, once again, the Life Orb and Sheer Force combination, so that way you get a crap ton of power boost and all that stuff. So first things first, we're going to go for Poison Jab here, because Poison Jab is going to be a very solid stab move to utilize, and when it's, you know, when you combine the fact that it's stab, Sheer Force, and Life Orb boosted, like, that is going to do so much damage. So coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves Rock Slide, because you want to be able to have, once again, another move that is boosted by Sheer Force, and Rock Slide is just a really good move to have. Like, it destroys flying, it destroys fire, destroys bugs, all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? So coming up next, we have ourselves Fire Punch, so that way you end up destroying Steel-type Pokemon like Scizor, like Ferrothorn, and the list goes on. And last but not least, we have ourselves Ice Punch for that good old Ice-type coverage, right? Now, we then move on to the stats. We're going to be going with a Jolly Nature here, so that way you can increase the speed and lower the special attack. And we're going to be running 252 EVs into the attack and 252 into the speed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, something else I want to showcase here. You can very easily, okay? You can very easily replace one of these moves with, say, Earthquake or something. Now, Earthquake, I want to point out, it is not boosted by Sheer Force, so you are going to suffer Life Orb recoil. But if you really don't care about that and you just want to have the stab, then you can go for something like Earthquake, and you could even, you know, forgo something like Poison Jab or something and replace it with Earthquake, seeing how Earthquake is, you know, it's a really good move to have, and also Earthquake hits a lot more Pokemon for super effective damage, right? And, you know, if you're, you know, not worried about missing out on fire or ice type coverage, then you could go for something like, does this thing get crunch? Does it get crunch, crunch, crunch? No, it does not. Sadly, it doesn't get crunch, but you could go for something like Sucker Punch if you want. Sucker Punch is a very, very good priority move to have. And the only way that that move hits is if your opponent was to do an attack on you. So the thing is that, you know, that's what Sucker Punch is. You know, it usually goes first, the target, it will fail if the target is not attacking. So, you know, do keep that in mind so you can, you know, replace, say, Ice Punch or Fire Punch with Sucker Punch. So just do it like that. And then, you know, get all sorts of really interesting type coverage off that way as well. And also something to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, is that Sucker Punch nails Psychic-type Pokemon for super effective damage, which is something that Nidoking is very much weak against. It is very much weak against Psychic-type moves. Now, just to kind of put things in perspective here, allow me to show you, like, just all the moves that it's got, you know? It's got Aqua Tail, Avalanche, Body Slam, Brick Break, Detect, you know? Like, it's got so much. It's also got Dragon Pulse, Dragon Tail, Drill Run. Like, that's just absolutely crazy. You know, it's got Fire Blast, Fire Punch, Flamethrower, Focus Blast, Focus Punch, a whole bunch of things, even Head Smash. That thing having Head Smash, that is crazy. Like, can you imagine, like, Head Smash on a Nidoking? Like, if only it didn't do so much recoil. Like, okay, here's the thing. It's base 150 power, so it's going to hit for a lot of damage against Pokemon that are weak against Rock-type moves. But see, here's the thing, is that half the damage you deal comes back to you in recoil, and when you also factor in Life Orb recoil as well, kind of not worth it, you know? So, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind as well. You know, it's got Ice Beam, Ice Punch, Mega Horn, Outrage, Poison Jab, Power Punch, all sorts of things that you can go and, you know, just end up using and all that stuff. You got Roar, you know, if you want to phase out Pokemon that try to set up on you and all that stuff, you go for something like that as well. You go for something like Sleep Talk, and, you know, you go for, like, Rest or something, so you could have something like, let's see, you could have the Rest and Sleep Talk combination and just get off more attacks that way and have more longevity. So basically what you do, you get off an attack, you take a hit, get off another attack, take a hit, and then you go for Rest, and then Sleep Talk your way to victory by just, you know, Sleep Talking and being able to choose a move at random, and hopefully it'll choose the right move and not choose Rest or something like that, because Sleep Talk tends to have a tendency to troll you with, you know, choosing Rest even though you're already asleep, right? But, you know, that could be something to keep in mind as well. You go for something like Substitute to ease Prediction. Like, it's really up to you as to what you want to do with Nidoking. It's got so much potential, you know? So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is going to be the end of the set, and also the end of this video. So I want to say thank you guys all very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next upload.